Welcome back. We're moving on to chapter 2 of Cooper's Applied Behavior Analysis, 3rd edition. We'll be talking about behavior, operant and respondent behavior, as well as the 3-term contingency. And basically chapter 2 is like the meat and potatoes of behavior. So it starts on page 25 and there are quite a few key terms here, so don't worry, don't stress, grab your favorite drink, just listen along as I take you on this journey of the basic concepts and principles of applied behavior analysis. So behavior is the living organism interacting in some way, shape, or form with its environment. Now, this can be inside of the body or outside of the body. So if a mosquito bites me, right, and I start scratching, what am I doing? My behavior, I'm scratching because of the stimuli. What was the stimuli? The mosquito biting me, okay? Internal would be me eating a chocolate chip cookie. So I'm eating the chocolate chip cookie. You can't see the chocolate chip cookie once I swallow it, right? But my body is digesting it. So my body is engaging in a behavior internally, even though nobody else can see it. So that is how we will be using behavior in applied behavior analysis. It's anything that occurs that our body is interacting with in some way, shape, or form, inside or outside of our skin. So Cooper goes on to explain that there are a few different ways that we will see and hear about behavior that do not apply to ABA. For example, they're talking about the behavior of the stock market. Well, if you don't know anything about the stock market, then you could compare it to the behavior of the TikTok algorithm or Instagram algorithm, right? It's not a living, breathing organism, but people use behavior. The other thing he talks about is how living organism might get moved. So for example, if you're in a tornado, hopefully not, but if you're in a tornado and you get picked up and moved by the tornado, you yourself are not moving, right? The behavior might be you screaming until you go hoarse because you're terrified, but the actual part where your body gets picked up and moved would not be your behavior because the tornado did that. The force of the tornado did that. So we just want to make sure that when you are picking and choosing behaviors that you're going to observe, measure, and change as a behavior analyst, that it is actually the behavior itself and not something that is related to the actual behavior. So then we move on to our first key term, which is response. Oh no, just kidding. Behavior was our first one. So this is our second one. Response, which is just one single instance of a behavior. So for example, if we are tracking hitting, you would have the onset and the offset and the operational definition of what hitting is, so that you can determine exactly how many times the individual or the organism is hitting themselves, right? So that would be one instance of the behavior. And a response class is a group of responses with the same function. So aggression, hitting would fall under aggression, and you might have hitting, spitting, kicking, and scratching, right? So one instance would be the hitting, but if you're talking about a response class, then it could be multiple different things. Response topography just refers to what the behavior actually looks like. So if we're talking about hitting, does that mean open palm hitting, closed fist hitting, grabbing a bat and hitting you with the bat, right? So there's a couple of different ways, well, unlimited ways to define hitting. And so this is why the treatment plans are individualized, because hitting will be different across different individuals and functions of the behavior as well. Repertoire. So you will hear this when you're doing behavioral momentum or maintenance trials, or maybe when you're implementing errorless or error correction teaching procedures, is you will do a distractor trial with the individual's repertoire, something that's already in their repertoire. So what does this mean? This means that it's something that the individual is able to do independently already, right? So like, I can do this independently, I can do this independently, I can do this independently. Nobody needed to prompt me. I didn't need aid in any way, shape, or form. So that is one way that we use repertoire. And then the other way that repertoire is used is, like, for example, the repertoire for going to an event. Like if you go to a wedding, there's certain different behaviors that fall in the repertoire of what's acceptable and not acceptable for a wedding. All right, so that's it for part 1 of chapter 2, Basic Concepts and Principles of Applied Behavior Analysis. Join me next week for part 2. I'm not sure how many pieces they're going to be, but I'm trying to make them short and sweet so you guys don't get overwhelmed and it's not too much information in one setting. Let me know if you want me to combine them. So I'll have chapter 1 in one video and then I can do chapter 2 in another video. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.